Governor Hickenlooper and Luis Benitez, thank you both so much for doing our show. It's really an honor to be with you guys, and
thanks for having
great to
us
be here in Denver and in the great state of Colorado. We've really enjoyed our time here. I know all Coloradans know all about you, but for those that don't know, I just find it fascinating. I mean, you were a geologist, you were the mayor of Denver, you started a brewery, you're a musician, we just found that out.
Not really. They said I couldn't keep a job.
Well, and you're a great outdoorsman, I know that as well. And so I want to start with asking you about the Office of Recreation that you started here, and you got Luis involved. So what was the impetus for that?
Well, our idea was we wanted to celebrate our public lands, our outdoor vigor.
Yeah.
And so, actually, to be honest, Utah had opened an Office of Outdoor Recreation, but they were having trouble. There was just some friction, and we thought, that's a great idea that we can do even better. And of course, the only way you can do something like that better is to find somebody who's incredible. And so we were lucky to find, and it's only maybe a dozen times in my life where the exact right person comes into the right job at the right moment.
Well, there you go. And so let me ask, Luis, how's it going?
He hit the nail right on the head. Obviously, what we focus on here is just the health and well-being of a significant portion of our economy. So when you talk about the health of forests and the health of our waterways, you're really talking about a significant portion of the jobs that we create here, the economy that we have here, and you don't necessarily need to be involved with the outdoor industry to be passionate about all these things. So to be responsible for some of that oversight and the care and feeding of such an amazing industry in such an iconic state, it's kind of humbling.
As you know, our program is called America's Forest, and we have really enjoyed the Colorado forest, I must say. And we're also focusing on water quality. So I'd love for you both to speak about the nexus of forests here in Colorado and what it means to water quality.
When you talk about waterways and you talk about the ecosystem and the health of our forests, I mean, we're in a perfect spot to talk about the value add to the economy. I mean, this ski line focuses on utilizing pine beetle wood, a wood that anybody else would look at and say, it's done, there's no further use or no further service. And I would argue that Colorado captures both the entrepreneurs in this space and the innovation for something like that. When you consider our waterways that go through a lot of our tiny, iconic mountain towns, you're starting to see river parks that have stand-up paddleboard surf waves. If I would have told you 5 years ago that you could buy an inflatable surfboard and go surf on a mountain creek, you probably would have told me I was nuts, but here we have a multi-million-dollar economy that is helping grow the economy in these small towns.
When Luis is talking about the passion for the outdoors, I mean, Colorado has so many young people, and they've got a passion for outdoor recreation, but they've also got a passion for beer. We're in a place that celebrates beer.
Thank you for that one.
But we also are a place that has a real passion for music, and there's also a real passion for water. And those passions are what create community, they create energy, and they create an economy. And ever since we've kind of had this kind of magic, and it comes almost out of the outdoors. We've had more entrepreneurs come here, more businesses start. We've been talking about the outdoors, about water, day in and day out. And you know, we have 2.3% unemployment now. We're the lowest state in the entire United States, and there are only 4 states in history that have ever gotten down to 2.3%. And I would argue that it's paying attention to the water and the forests and the outdoor recreation is a big driver.
That's an impressive figure. That is really amazing.
I look at how we are changing our attitude towards all these environmental challenges, and water is such a good one, that we are continuously trying to figure out ways to be more conservation minded. The city of Denver, basically Denver water supplies about 1/4 of domestic water, 1/4 of the whole state.
Unbelievable.
And when I first got elected, they always said, well, we've got our senior water rights, we don't care about the rest of you. And luckily the mayor gets to appoint the 5 board members of Denver Water, and we put conservation in there with each person. I have 3 interviews with them. I'd make sure I knew what their DNA was. And now Denver Water is one of the foremost conservation-oriented utilities in the country. In the first 5 years, we cut per capita consumption by 20%. And that, when you start creating that cultural shift, is when good things really happen.
I'd like to talk a little bit more about the challenges that come with trying to maintain that healthy forest. We have had some tough wildfires here. The Hayman Fire, 2002. I think it was the Buffalo Creek Fire back in '96. And tell me about the restoration. How do you deal with it after the fact that it's happened and you have to deal with that in terms of restoring the land? Talk about that a little bit.
To a certain extent, wildfires are a natural part of the cycle.
Right.
And in some places, we've worked so hard to make sure there are no small-scale wildfires.
Yes.
That when we have so much fuel that when we have a fire, it burns hotter, goes faster,
Yeah.
and goes farther than it would go under normal natural conditions. But we've had these cycles of wildfires. Back in 1910, or I think it was 1912, with a big burn.
Yeah.
Timothy Egan wrote that wonderful book. So we've seen this before, but this does seem to be more pervasive on a longer scale than anything we've ever seen before.
Yeah.
And when you get these really hot fires, it is hard. You have to kind of, in some cases, if you leave the beetle kill up and it goes a few years and it falls down and then you get a fire, they burn so hot that they almost sterilize, almost completely sterilize the soil. So you have to intentionally revegetate. Usually forests will come back pretty quickly on their own.
Yeah, well, there has been a lot of replanting and restoration going on. I know that.
And I would argue, to finish that point, that when it comes to that reforestation and that revegetation, when you have to find a way to teach the next generation about conservation and stewardship, and you have to find a way to help them understand the importance of that whole ecosystem and cycle that the governor was describing, to be able to get school kids out to help with some of that reforestation work. One of the lucky parts about living in Colorado is how strong our nonprofit sector of our industry is. And so when tragedies like this occur, even though there is a natural rhythm to them and they do have a place in our ecosystem, to be able to have an opportunity to teach the next generation about why it's so important to get back out there and reforest some of these areas and what it means in terms of the life cycle of the forest, the wood, the riparian environments, the watersheds. It really is a unique opportunity that I would argue Colorado does a really great job of capitalizing on.
I want to bring up a subject that I think all of America faces, but especially Colorado and especially here in the Metro Denver area, and that is growth. You're experiencing incredible growth here. It's just amazing. I come from Georgia. Atlanta has a similar problem. But I would just like for you to talk about that a little bit and how to offset some of the challenges that comes along with that growth.
So we have grown, and I was part of that. I got laid off as a geologist back in the 80s. I opened this brew pub in 1988 in downtown, what's called Lodo, lower downtown. Yeah. Right across from the train station. Our rent was $1 per square foot per year. And in 1991, I bought the building for $11 a square foot. Now that whole region is jammed. It's full of apartment buildings and condos. But there were 5 or 6 of us kind of, we were small-scale real estate developers, and we wanted to create community where you could walk to work, not have traffic jams, and really have urban density. So when I got elected mayor, one of the first things I did was go out and build a relationship with all the suburban mayors, and we got the suburban mayors are almost all Republicans, and I was a Democrat, and usually the city and the suburbs hate each other. They're always fighting over businesses and citizens, and I said, that's crazy. If we work together, and so we started working together for about a year and a half, and we got all 34 mayors to unanimously support a 0.4% sales tax increase to build what we call fast tracks, 122 miles of new track, so that people didn't have to get in their cars. People could begin to get in denser concentrations around all these stations, right? We had this planned urban developments, and it's transformed Denver. Denver used to be one of the most sprawling places ever, and each year it's getting denser and denser and denser, and that's really the hope of the future. Is you want people to live in urban areas that generally emit less pollution, less carbon, but they go out into these outdoor recreational opportunities and appreciate the wilderness, right?
Yeah, and I would argue that that's really the question that's in front of us right now with this immense growth. People are coming here because they want a piece of what we have. And what we have is this iconic outdoor landscape all around the city. And so one of the questions that we ask ourselves a lot is, what is that ethic, that wilderness ethic that we're imparting to tourists? Because 9 times out of 10, you got a really good shot of somebody coming here, falling in love with the place, and wanting to move here in some capacity, either personally or professionally. So if they're coming here, and I think if we're asking the right questions about what kind of an ethic we're imparting to citizens that have been here for a long time, guests to our state, people that are just moving here, to understand really what it means to be a Coloradan and how special it is to protect some of these resources. So yes, growth is amazing and it's immense. And I think we're starting to have the right kind of conversation around making sure that the people come here know the things that we hold to be most important. And I think that, above all else, really lends to a blended economy, and it lends to a really healthy and vibrant society.
And I know you're an environmentalist and you care about these issues, and climate change is a real issue of our time, probably the issue of our time. So let's talk about that a little bit, the importance of Colorado's forests sequestering that carbon.
Sure, and you know, I think one of the solutions that we haven't quite gotten our arms around, there's a word called topophilia, which most people have never heard, but topophilia means love of place. And most people love where they are. Not everybody, and we move around a lot, but there is, for most people, a strong love of place. And once you love a place, then you're going to pay attention to the environmental circumstances and the consequences of your actions, or lack of action. And that's where, when you look at carbon sequestration, and you know, each person, plant a tree in your yard. Plant on the south side of your house, so as that tree grows taller, it gives you shade and you don't turn the air conditioners on in the summer. I mean, these are small actions that make, you know, their effects are magnified so significantly over time.
That's right. Well, listen, cheers to that, my friends, and thank you both again so much for being with us. It's been a real joy.